This is Steve. Today I want to tell you a story about a woman and a garden. But really, it's a story about time and how we learn to grow again after everything falls apart. The garden that waited. There was a small house on the edge of a quiet village. It had a wooden fence, a tired gate, and a garden that hadn't seen care for years. The grass was high, the soil was dry, and weeds covered what once had been. A place full of color and laughter. And in that old house lived a woman named Eliza. She was in her late 50s. Her husband had passed away 2 years earlier, and her son had moved to another country. Days passed slowly. She would wake up, make tea, sit by the window, and look at the empty garden as if waiting for something to grow again inside her. The day she stepped outside. One morning in early spring, after a long night of rain, she opened the door and stepped outside. The smell of wet earth filled the air. The clouds were moving away, and the first light touched the garden. She stood there for a long time, her slippers sinking slightly into the soft mud. And then, almost without thinking, she knelt down and touched the soil with her hands. It was cold, heavy, alive. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled. Just a little. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the smell of the earth. Maybe it was the feeling of life beneath her fingers. Maybe it was simply time. The beginning of something small. That same day, she went to the small shop in the village and bought a few seed packets. Tomatoes, basil, lavender, and sunflowers. The man at the counter smiled. "First time gardening?" he asked. She laughed softly. First time in a long time. That afternoon, she planted the seeds. The soil was stubborn, the weeds fought back, and her hands hurt. But she didn't stop. Every morning after that, she watered them, even when it rained, even when nothing seemed to change. Days became weeks, weeks became months, and slowly, very slowly, something began to grow. The healing hidden in growth. There's a strange thing about gardening. You don't just grow plants. You grow patience. You learn to wait. You learn to trust what you cannot see. As she took care of her small patch of earth, Eliza began to notice the world again. The sound of birds, the warmth of sunlight on her back, the way time passed gently when her hands were in the soil. She realized that healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from reconnecting. Every seed she planted, felt like a small promise to herself. I'm still here. I can still begin again. Sometimes she talked to the plants as if they were listening. Sometimes she cried quietly while pulling weeds, and somehow that felt like part of the process too. When the garden came alive. By the end of summer, her garden was full. Lavender filled the air with its perfume. Sunflowers stood tall, turning their faces toward the light. Neighbors began to stop by. They leaned on the fence and said, "Your garden looks beautiful." And Eliza would smile. "Thank you," she'd say. "But it's not just a garden. It's my therapy." One day, a little girl from next door brought her a small note. It said, "I like your flowers. They make our street happy." Eliza held that note for a long time. For the first time in years, she cried, not from sadness, but from gratitude. What she learned. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, she sat in her garden with a cup of tea. The air was golden, and the smell of basil and earth surrounded her. She thought of her husband, of how much he had loved this place, and she whispered, "I'm keeping it alive for both of us." Then she smiled. She realized something beautiful. You can't rush healing. You can't demand it, and you can't schedule it. You can only plant small moments of care day after day until one morning you wake up and realize you're blooming too. She learned that pain doesn't disappear. It transforms. Like compost, it becomes the soil that new life grows from. And that's what she was doing all along. She wasn't just planting flowers. She was planting time. The seasons that followed. Years passed. The garden changed with the seasons, but it never stopped growing. Each winter, it rested. And so did she. Each spring, it came back to life. And so did she. People often came to visit her garden. Some came for advice, some for comfort. And she would always tell them the same thing. Don't be afraid of time. It's not your enemy. It's your gardener. She taught others to plant too. Not just flowers, but hope. She showed them that growth isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, watering the soil, and trusting that one day, something beautiful will bloom. What the garden became. Now, when you walk by that little house, you can still smell the lavender in the wind. The wooden fence is covered in vines, and bees move lazily from flower to flower. Sometimes, if you stop and listen, you can almost hear her humming softly. A song about patience and peace. because the garden didn't just heal her. It became her message to the world. Every petal said, "Life goes on." Every leaf whispered, "You can start again." And every seed promised, "Nothing beautiful is ever truly lost." Closing reflections. Maybe that's what healing really is. Learning to plant time instead of wasting it. To water your days with care. To grow again even when you thought you never could. We all lose something. Someone we love, a dream, a part of ourselves. But life keeps giving us seasons, and with each one, a new chance to begin. Eliza didn't rebuild her past. She built her peace. And maybe that's what we're all here to do. To turn pain into patience, loneliness into presence, and silence into a garden. Because no matter how broken life seems, as long as there's soil beneath your feet and breath in your chest, you can still plant something new. Thank you for listening. This was Simple Stories with Steve. See you next time.